What were your methods of actually getting clients?
I was always good at networking. That was one thing. I always knew someone that knew someone that knew someone. I think as a tip, I guess building relationships would be a
Yeah.
key component because if you don't know anyone, then you really don't know how to spread your way around in the most organic way possible.
Hello, everyone, to the First Scale podcast. And today I have a very special guest for you, who is actually Tony from TN3D Studios, which is one of the OG channels for 3D rendering in YouTube. So, hi, Tony. How are you? It's a pleasure to have you in this podcast, especially in the first episode.
Thank you, Melos. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I
Mhm.
really, really enjoy watching your content as well, and it was great to be on your channel.
Yeah, perfect. I do have your YouTube channel open in my screen right now, and I can see that the first video that you uploaded was almost 11 years ago. So can you just go a little bit through your journey on what it was that pushed you to actually start your YouTube journey as a 3D visualizer, and how is it actually playing out for you these days?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's common. It's just like everybody else. You are exploring a new platform. I think YouTube was relatively new back then, and there weren't a lot of videos out. Showing these type of like instructions and how to do things. I think my
Hmm.
first video was, if I remember correctly, was animation. It was
Hmm.
an animation of like just rain and a building of a house.
Yeah.
So I did that with SketchUp, V-Ray, and After Effects, and I learned how to do the rain effect in After Effects. So I'm a visual learner. I learn by doing things. So it took me a couple of tries, but once I was proud of it, I put it out there, and it was just, there weren't videos like that. So you put things out there and you just kind of explore, right? So
Hmm.
and yeah, and back then I think Chaos Group had a couple of tutorials out learning how to use V-Ray, and I was trying to learn how to use V-Ray as well. So since it was limited in that area, I just started making videos myself later on.
Mhm. And was it back then as a hobby for you, or was it a form of investment in your brand, or what was like the intention of actually exploring the YouTube platform and actually putting videos out?
It was honestly just for fun. At
Hmm.
that moment, it was for fun. There weren't any ad revenue options. There wasn't really. I don't think even any of us or the ones that have been on YouTube for that long knew that it would be where it is today, right? So for starters, it was really just an innocent thing. Like you make a video, put it out, and see how it is, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it's crazy to see where YouTube is, and it's a way out for a lot of people to kind of add extra income to themselves, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah,
100%.
it was really just a tryout.
Yeah, and then the other side, there's a lot of people that kickstart their careers through YouTube by learning through videos that a lot of us try to put out. And obviously, the intention is always to help the community as much as possible. So let's talk a little bit about like the role of us 3D visualizers in the architecture industry. So how do you think the role of a 3D visualizer has changed from back then, so almost 11 years ago, to now? And what do you think has changed in this industry since then?
A lot has changed. I mean, I think even it's very evident that there's so many direction 3D has gone into. Back when I graduated school and I guess started working in the office,
Hmm.
3D rendering it was there. It was there. It wasn't a skill that I actually had at the moment, and I
Hmm.
kind of self-taught myself into it.
Hmm.
But I still work with architects who preferred hand drawings and sketches over computers because they were not ready to kind of transition to the digital world, right? So I've seen a couple of phases as far as 3D rendering goes.
Hmm.
Um, but eventually it really started to mature, right? With the advancements of V-Ray, and then 3ds Max. I think Blender came out a couple of years later, and things started to kind of, really step up.
Hmm.
And I had a couple of coworkers who were masters at 3D rendering. That's when I was really just, kind of taken by it. So there were a couple of coworkers who really like,
Hmm.
showed me step by step on how to do
Yeah.
things, and I kind of just learned from there.
Hmm.
But yeah.
You mentioned that some of the architects weren't willing to adapt to digitalized renders and all that. So, How do you see that as a parallel to what is happening right now with AI? So there's a lot of people who are hesitating into getting into
Right.
AI, and to switch from more manual work to actually letting the computer and the way they say the robots actually do the work. So
Mhm,
how do
mhm.
you see AI actually running in this industry? And just what do you see in the roadmap? And when do you think it will be the time for 3D visualizers to step back and say, actually, the robots can do a better job than us?
Mhm. No, I think it's fair to say that it can be scary for some people,
Yeah,
right? It can be
100%.
scary for some people, and for others, I mean, change is scary. It's scary until you see how it benefits you and how it benefits society, right? So,
Yeah.
I think even back then, for those that really still like to sketch on paper, that's the way they communicate. That's their medium to get their ideas across. So now with AI coming along, it's like for us, especially,
Hmm.
it's, we're at a fear that we might lose our jobs. We're at a fear that, you know, AI might just automate a lot of things. But I think it's good for the next generation because they're the ones that will see that as a normal,
Yeah,
right? And they're the ones that are going to open even more doors than us, right? We're just caught in the cross path, right? So
100%.
we will have to just make peace with it because I think AI has already been everywhere. It is everywhere. Your phone, your car.
Yeah, 100%.
So I was in a Tesla the other day, and I saw the live feed 3D generated map
Hmm.
that, and it recognizes people crossing around and cars,
Yeah,
what
yeah, yeah,
moving
yeah.
pylons. So
Yeah,
it's like
it's
it's
crazy.
been out there. It's been out there.
Yeah, it's just that right now it's getting a lot more attention. And honestly, I believe it's going to be good, and there's definitely going to be new professions coming around because people are
Yeah.
always going to find a new service to actually provide, and there's always going to be new problems that need to be solved. But what does like you mentioned that back then you used to work with other architects and do 3D ArcViz images for them. So, what does your day to day work look like these days, and what are you actually more focused on in different fields within the architecture
Mhm,
industry?
mhm. Um, Being a 3D visualizer within architecture, you have to be an architect to some extent. You have to
Yeah,
understand the role of an architect, and that includes reading 3D, reading architectural drawings, understanding how they're built,
yeah,
and knowing your way around structural drawings and all those information that are prerequisites, right?
mhm,
So if you don't you get that through school,
yeah,
and I believe back then 3D visualization was a class. It was a single class that we took, I think in first or second year.
hmm,
So it wasn't like I'm going to be a 3D artist. You start off with I'm going to be an architect, right?
yeah,
And
100%,
you end up discovering 3D visualization. I think that's the path for most of us.
mhm,
But when you're in an office, you're expected to have those skills, right? To be able to understand how things are built. Because architects sometimes they're really impatient, right? They're not gonna hold your hand and tell you how to do things. So you have to come equipped with that.
yeah,
You have to come
100%,
equipped with that. So those are some of the duties that are involved. I mean, you have the meetings, you have the back and forth communication that you have to go with, and I think you also have to really learn your client or whoever you're doing the project for, right? It's very different when you're creating a rendering for architect versus a interior designer
yeah,
versus I don't know,
real
product
estate,
or
yeah,
real estate, the general
yeah.
contractor, whatever it is it may be, right?
And then
So
and then there's a lot of differences with the location where the project is because of the
yeah,
standards and all
yeah,
of that. So there's a lot more complications that go in hand with 3D visualizers, and a lot of times the architects do look down on 3D visualizers in that sense.
yeah,
But at the same time, I believe being a 3D visualizer is essential and crucial to the way architects communicate these days because obviously not everyone understands how to read floor plans, and it is crucial to actually have 3D visualizations for marketing purposes and just communicating to the ideas to your potential customers and all of that, which is also a challenge for architects. But what do you think are the challenges of a 3D visualizer in the day-to-day work? So a lot of people struggle with getting the right clients, getting paid
Mhm.
enough, or
Mhm.
even choosing the right software, the most efficient one. So, what was a struggle for you when you were starting out, or what is a struggle for you compared to today?
Right off the bat, one of my biggest struggle was payment.
Hmm.
Figuring out how to charge my clients
Yeah.
because I was always business oriented, right? I was always business oriented, and I just didn't know the structure of how to, I guess, translate my skills into an hourly rate. Back then, I guess you could say $20 an hour was a lot, and we're talking about 2013,
Yeah.
around there, 2013. So that, I mean, when clients see that you can do a decent job, but you're charging relatively cheap, that's that's a that's a light bulb in their head. So to them, it's like, okay, so you can do pretty good renderings, but your pricing is, you know, lower than average. So that was one of my challenges because then I would get a lot of offers, a lot of works,
Mhm.
but I was just try to get through them, and there was no five or anything like that to kind of
Yeah.
outsource work to help you out, right?
Yeah.
Another challenge that I had, especially getting jobs in office, I guess, was the fact that I use SketchUp. There's this thing
Okay.
in SketchUp that in a lot of offices is like, they don't see it as a professional thing because maybe it's free, maybe it's I don't know, it's easy to use. I don't know,
It almost
but
looks
that,
like a game to them. So yeah.
yeah, exactly. But you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many offices I've been into, and SketchUp is their go-to. There's a reason why it is, within the top five, or maybe even sometimes number one. That's what I see.
Mhm.
Software for architects because of its simplicity and how easy it is to use and how fast you can get your ideas across. And that's a theme that is actually translated to a lot of the softwares today, where the learning curve is not necessarily that heavy and that deep. You can open the software and start learning it within days, right?
Mhm.
So back
And it,
then, if you saw 3ds Max, you would step back.
it's still even to this day, 3ds Max is a topic that really
Mhm.
um, scares people off. But you were talking about how accessible the softwares are these days, and we were just talking about AI, and someone who doesn't have any idea on how to even open a computer can just type a few words and then they have a
Yeah.
3D image. So every day is becoming more and more accessible. But I was going to go back to a topic that a lot of my audience and a lot of people in the 3D industry struggle with, that I've noticed, is on how to get clients and
Mhm.
what are the methods of marketing they use back then.
Mhm.
But what were your methods of actually getting clients, and what was your main source of new clients? Was it word of mouth? Did you do any marketing, or how did you actually get new clients? And
Yeah,
how do you
I
actually
was
get new clients now as well?
I would say I was particularly lucky
Mhm.
because I was always good at networking. That was
Mhm.
one thing. I always knew someone that knew someone that knew someone, right? So I think as a tip, I guess building relationships would be a
Yeah.
key component because if you don't know anyone, then you really don't know how to spread your way around in the most organic way possible, right? So it was always, I knew an interior designer that I would do a work for, and when they show that work elsewhere, they will refer me as somebody who can do that for somebody else. So that has always been a positive thing for me, and some of those those clients become friends,
Yeah.
right? So whenever you need work, you can always go back to them. The Instagram and social media, the way it is now, wasn't, I mean, I guess it's become the main thing because it's in everybody's hand. It wasn't like that back in the days. I guess it wasn't as intense. So I didn't really use social media to put myself out there, which is why I'm not even social media driven up till today.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a tool that, I mean, in your fingertips, you could have hundreds of people and clients, to showcase your work. And I think it's something that, I mean, everybody already uses it today, so it's one of the main tools to get clients. But
Yeah.
you still, I think the people skills, I think the networking skills, the organic way, the original way of doing things is still something that
100%.
benefits because you can turn those clients into long-term clients in easily.
Yeah,
within
100%.
social media. I think, yeah.
I was gonna say I noticed that still, even to this day, even though social media is super powerful,
Hmm.
I think a lot of people are underestimating the power of word of
Yeah,
mouth as a tool of marketing.
yeah.
And also, like the upper hand of the industry is that the whole industry is very image oriented or
Hmm.
visually. Uh, the quality is measured through visuals. So social
Yeah.
media is all about visuals and like photos and videos and all of that. So it's a very good place to get attention. However, I believe there's still a big part that goes into how you communicate
Hmm.
with your potential clients and how you're actually, you just mentioned like the actual networking skills. And definitely a lot of people I hear try to do a lot of email marketing and cold calling and all of that. While that can work, I still think it's very, very hard because, as I said, it's visually oriented. And if someone doesn't see what you can produce, they're
Yeah.
not actually going to be able to take the decision of hiring you or not
Hmm.
hiring you.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
the online portfolio is definitely one of the most important aspects, at least from what I've noticed. Um, I was going to ask, how has YouTube actually benefited you in this part? So, has
Hmm.
YouTube been a powerful tool in terms of marketing, and not only marketing to get clients, but as well as networking?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think YouTube YouTube for me was also a response to a skill that I didn't have. Like I couldn't, like, school and presentation was not like, I was not the most gifted at speaking. Let's just put it
Mhm,
that way. So when I think YouTube at one point started to become a portfolio, because what ended up happening for me is I ended up teaching visualization in my workplace, in workplaces that allowed,
mhm,
right? So it allowed me to learn for myself, right?
mhm.
When I put out videos, I'm actually learning myself as well, and I'm sharing it out there to kind of get the feedback and see what people think, what are people struggling with, and that has been uh, and that's been very, very key in my development as a 3D artist, because it forces me to discover new things, it forces me to try out new things. So I've actually used YouTube on my resume, and I've shown people that they're like, if you want to learn how, you can go to my channel. And the first time I did that, it was like, wow, I was hesitant if I should or not, right?
Yeah,
So, but I think it's a good way, like other social media platforms, right, to have your online presence out there, put yourself out there,
yeah,
and because once you do network with people and you're able to speak with them, they do want that proof that you are legit, that you
mhm,
can actually do what you say you can do, right? So,
yeah.
I think it's important to still have that presence and the networking skills, and YouTube has been a huge part of some of my success into getting to certain offices and so forth. So
100%. You just actually reminded me of something that. So I'm very new to YouTube compared to how long you have been doing YouTube and 3D visualization. So I started YouTube about 2 years ago,
mhm.
but I still remember that I was too self-conscious to actually put my name as the YouTube channel name and actually just put myself out there. So I was just using
You did
voice.
that recently, right?
Hmm?
You did that recently.
Yeah, so I was just going to talk about this because I first named the YouTube channel after the rendering firm, like the rendering business. And
Mhm.
recently, just about 2 weeks ago, I just did a rebrand on actually naming the YouTube channel after like my real name. And it was just it was actually just thinking on what if tomorrow or some day else I just start a new business, like the whole channel is going to collapse because it's not going to be the same. So I'd rather have it under my
Mhm.
name to actually still get the audience with me, even if I do other business ventures and all of that. But obviously this wasn't the whole idea when I was starting out. So how was it for you when you started out? Were you like to at least for me, I wasn't as secure to actually tell people that I have a YouTube channel because
Yeah.
the numbers were low back then. But
Mhm.
after some videos kind of took off, I had more confidence to actually show people that this is what I'm doing and this is like the path that I have chosen. So, how was it for you
Mhm.
to actually present yourself as a YouTuber to other people and your peers in the industry?
It's interesting that up till today, there's certain people that I actually choose not to tell that I'm a YouTuber. Right?
Mhm.
I think you kind of have to read the room. It's not every environment that's going to be. support the fact that you have something else out of
Mhm.
work, and this is just work specifically.
Yeah.
um
Mhm.
so it's a way of, like I said before, it's credibility, right? You
Mhm.
have to have proof that you are a professional,
Mhm.
that you conduct yourself as an artist, right?
Yeah.
And I think YouTube, I mean, the moment you put something out there, and I'm not referring to anybody within, the last generation who just put anything online and they can, have a presence for doing something crazy. But when you put something online that your name is attached to it, you have a I want to say pride, right? That you're putting something out there that's going to represent you well, right?
Mhm.
So in a way, it forces you to be business oriented. It forces you to be a professional. It forces you to become something that you're truly not, in a way that it's not like, okay, I gotta make money to do this. No, you actually do this for fun, but at the same time you are becoming a credible person
Yeah.
within the industry, right?
Mhm.
So if you're able to do all of that, then over time you're going to create a trail of
Yeah.
positive things that people could look back on and be like, okay, he's been on YouTube for that long, or he's been on YouTube for this long, but he has been helping out the community, right?
100%.
And I think even for you, I think you've become the face of Landscape or something.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Well,
So anytime Landscape comes along, I already have a face attached to it. And I think it's good. It's good when it happens like that. And even companies are noticing that content creators are you know essential now. It wasn't like that before, but it's a space where that's still being discovered. But it's now like every company has a social media content creator representative,
yeah. 100%. Even Hollywood movies are trying to bring in YouTubers into their movies, and I mean we've already seen
Absolutely.
this
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they just see the power of actual organic like influencers that just don't do a whole lot of budgeting into their content, but
Mhm.
the audience is strong. And a lot of the time, the actual um, creators were the ones that needed Hollywood. But I mean, I talk Hollywood in the sense that like the established media.
Mhm.
But nowadays, I feel like the established media needs creators more than the other way around. So that's definitely a great point that you made right there. Um, I was actually going to ask you because on the phone previously to actually starting the podcast, you mentioned that you're also like an environment architect and
Mhm.
you do other things as well. So
Yeah.
a lot of people, or at least me, I most of the time right now only do like 3D visualization work. But
Mhm.
how do you think that the transition between a 3D artist and to actually becoming an architect goes? And do you see that it is like what are the ups and downs of being a 3D visualization artist first before becoming an architect?
Hmm. Repeat that last part of the question again. Let me just
Because
understand.
yeah, because I was trying to say that a lot of people see being a 3D visualization artist as a negative part to becoming an architect because
Hmm.
you don't have the actual design skills, and some people actually see that as the upper hand. So where does this
Hmm.
stand
Okay.
in your point of view?
I think that's an interesting point of view. That's an interesting point of view because I see let's just separate 3D artists has a complementary skill to an architect,
Hmm.
right? I think because I mean there are 3D artists in every industry.
Hmm.
There's a 3D artist in the car industry, in the automobile industry, in in architecture, in everything. But I think you being an architect or having the skills of an architect helps you to become a better 3D artist.
Yeah.
You having design skills help you to become a better 3D artist. Because if you simply just know the software
Hmm.
and you don't know anything else, and I've noticed that there are a lot of people like that.
Hmm.
They jump into the software, they jump into trying to create the beautiful images, they get tied into that, but they neglect the technical skills
Yeah.
and the background knowledge that you need to have on what does a beam look like, what does a window look like, what does a door look like. it surprises me that sometimes you'll see a door is a simple square, it has no framing, it has
Yeah,
no details, and they legit believe that's a door, right? And
yeah, 100%.
and so I think, again, right, I didn't set out to be a 3D artist. I wanted to be an architect. At some point I lost interest in that and became a 3D artist. So, but those skills, is what makes me the 3D artist that I am, right? Is not the fact that I learned how to use SketchUp, 3ds Max, or V-Ray. It's the fact that I stuck through my AutoCAD class and learned how to, measure things and learn how to create drawings, right? That I have to read today,
Yeah.
right? So it's a lot of things that even during school I did not like, I didn't enjoy, but has come full circle today because it's like, oh shoot, this is
Mhm,
actually has helped me, when it comes to the actual field. So
mhm. Yeah, and what do you think about the other way around? So when someone is actually into like 3D rendering and all that,
mhm,
and they want to transition from 3D rendering to architecture,
yeah.
what do you think are the skills that a 3D artist in the architecture field can take with him when he's trying to become like a full-time architect instead of only focusing on 3D rendering?
Hmm. I mean, as an architect, you should already be creative. You should already be a problem solver, and
Mhm.
you should already know how you learn, right? So I think it's actually easier. Again, I can't really say because that's not the way I took it, but
Mhm.
I think anyone should always have the willingness to learn, right? I think that's the key thing here, because you might not enjoy having to, you know, it's also not easy to learn a 3D software, right? It's not easy. It takes you out of your rhythm as an architect, as a designer. It forces you to let go of the pencil that you're so used to for years, and
Yeah.
learn how to use a mouse and maybe learn how to use AutoCAD and all the settings that have kind of become crazy over the years. So you have to be willing to learn. You have to be open to the idea that these softwares are now so advanced, right? And you got to have patience. I don't think it's a skills that you do learn overnight. And a lot of people think, you open the software and it's just out there. You need patience. You need, and most of the times, an instructor. You need a mentor. You need somebody that can hold your hand and kind of like, okay, show you steps by steps how to create. I know there's a, what's his name, the guy, Blender Guru. He's
Yeah.
amazing. you
Yeah. Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that one donut tutorial, you learn so much, right? So
And-
I think that's just it. You have to be open to what's out there today, and
yeah.
challenge yourself that within 6 months you're going to learn whatever you want to learn. You're going to get that skills under your belt.
Yeah, 100%. And then um, I was just thinking something out as you mentioned that actually having like 3D visualization classes while you were at school, like university, college, and
Mhm.
uh, I do notice a big trend, at least with my generation, of actually being more attracted to learning online rather than going to school and all of that. And I do believe there are some fields, not in architecture, but I'm talking in general, that you can become a professional and actually do good even if you don't go in college. But
Mhm.
how do you think the actual architecture industry uh, works in that sense? So if someone just doesn't like the structure of how the college classes are actually structured and all of that, can they still become an architect even if they don't like college?
I think, well, for starters, the education system is behind.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
behind in that aspect. I think learning has evolved so much, as far as other platforms, that it is difficult to sit through a 3 hour class about architecture history.
Yeah.
I think the education system, they haven't done they could do a much better job in the way they present, the school and the classes and that sort of. So when online courses come around, when Udemy comes around, when Skillshare comes around, and people know that they can do this at home, That's why those platforms have become so much more popular. And then when YouTube comes around and you start, finding answers to the problems that you have just right
Yeah.
there. Like I did a tutorial on it, right? So I think we are attracted to things that come easy, right? And
Hmm.
especially when it's for free. Most of the YouTube content, we're generous enough to put it out there for anybody to access. Um, and school, there is still that barrier that you gotta pay thousands of dollars to go sit and 6 hour
And sometimes,
courses, right?
yeah, and sometimes even sit through lectures that teachers are just playing YouTube videos anyway.
Absolutely. You know what? You know what? Yesterday, this even happened yesterday.
Mhm.
I was talking to a coworker and he literally quoted a YouTuber that I know. And
Well,
and I was listening to that. It was so funny that and he's actually let me not get into that. But
yeah,
he was explaining something to me that he learned about
mhm,
dynamic components.
yeah.
And I know which channel he went to already. He's like, I watched the guy on YouTube.
For SketchUp, right?
Yeah, for SketchUp,
It's
yeah.
probably SketchUp Essentials.
Of course, of course.
Of course,
So
yeah.
he quotes he
Yeah,
quotes he quotes Justin,
yeah.
and it was so funny. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And again, it's the realization that has content creators, we are in the workplace. Like we people know who we are, right? And again, it's like I said, when you put your name out there, you don't know who is watching, right?
Yeah.
You don't know who's looking at your videos.
Mhm,
So you always have to understand that you are somebody is going to watch this, somebody's going to learn something from this. So
mhm.
your best effort is always encouraged in
Yeah,
that regard.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I was just gonna get into some of like the architecture software or like rendering software in general,
Mhm.
and as of now, we're seeing a big shift into GPU renderers. So, DeFi render, Lumion, Enscape, Twinmotion, all of this stuff. So, have you actually tried a lot of them out? What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of them? And
Yeah.
which one do you think is actually going to be the winner in this realm? So, what is going to be like the biggest one that is going to dominate these ones for the next 2 or 3 years?
Mhm. I see. I see a big shift for starters in all of these
Hmm.
softwares. The first program I started using was I don't even remember. It's not even around anymore. It's not even around anymore. It was IDX Next or something like that. It's very
Oh,
old. Yeah, it's
I
very
thought
old.
you were going to say Atlantis, and because I
No,
remember that
I've tried Atlantis.
I
Wasn't
absolutely
really a
hate
fan
the
of it. You
software.
tried it?
Yeah, I've tried it because I remember like a long time ago, maybe five, six, seven. I was 15 or 16 when I was trying it out, and it
Yeah.
was awful. Like a lot of like I know it's from early. It's like an OG in the rendering
Yeah,
space,
yeah, technology.
but
Yeah.
these days it just doesn't match up anywhere with the standards. So yeah.
I think that's the case with most of the programs. Trust me, I gravitated more towards V-Ray, but even
Mhm.
V-Ray back then was intimidating for me. Like it
Yeah.
was V-Ray 1.4 something, and like the UI was all over the place, and there's buttons,
Hmm.
there was no previews, none of that stuff, right? So it forced you to learn like what is subdivision, like what is reflection. You had to learn all of those terms.
Yeah.
So there's V-Ray, and then V-Ray was mostly CPU.
Hmm.
And what's next? What came out next? I think Keyshot was also around back then.
Okay.
Keyshot is amazing. I tried Keyshot a couple of times, but because of work, right, in the office, we weren't using it in the office, so I didn't end up like becoming too good in it. So, but I do like Keyshot.
Hmm.
Um, I think Lumion, yeah, Lumion is amazing. Lumion is amazing. I think Lumion is a top one up there because of how it's very versatile. Like it has a lot of the features that you would want. It allows you to do almost everything, right, in an instant. it has the dynamic component, it has the animated assets,
assets. Yeah,
it has everything, even the animation and video capabilities is really like top notch. I've seen some animations done in Lumion that are just amazing.
yeah. It,
D5 D5 has really stepped up over the last couple of years.
yeah,
It's and they're oh they are really about it. They mean it when they say they want to become the next best out there, because I think they listen a lot to the community. They know what we want, they know what we're asking, and they just deliver. Right, the next update you realize, oh, that feature is there. Right,
yeah,
so they're very they pay a lot of attention to what content creators are saying
mhm,
and what we're asking.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
Enscape, sorry,
yeah, yeah. Continue. Yeah, continue on.
yeah,
Then
Enscape is has, how do I put it? Enscape has made it so easy to become a 3D artist.
hmm
I think if anybody has the fear that, oh, I can't do this, Enscape is the first software that I would direct them to, right?
hmm
Because it has the easiest learning curve, and it has the simplest UI, and at the same time you become an expert just using it, right? So I think if it's the most popular, I would say it is the most popular right now,
hmm
because just because of its simplicity and the easy learning curve, and you learn things as you go, right? So
Yeah.
other softwares, you kind of have to step back and be like, okay, I really have to understand what this is. But Enscape simplifies things in a way that is like, it's really beginner friendly,
mhm,
and you can still wow people when you present
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah.
um
And then Twinmotion as well. Have you tried
Yeah,
Twinmotion?
yeah. I've tried to. Honestly, I try all this stuff as soon as they come out. I
Yeah.
really do. I think the only thing I'm guilty of is not having the time to put out the content in the channel.
It,
Um, but I've tried all of these programs. And
yeah.
it was my job also to kind of get these programs and present them to the office to see if we should invest on a license. Right, that was the case with Lumion. It was also the case with was Twinmotion always free?
Um, I think previously it was free.
It was free, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
I'm
It
getting
was
this.
free.
I think it was just Lumion. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was
No, I was
another software I'm kind of forgetting. It at the beginning it kind of looked like a. I think it was Enscape. It was either Enscape or Lumion.
that it was
It,
first
it
free or
No, it was not that it was free. I think I took a trial,
uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
it didn't look as good, so we kind of like, no, we're not going to do this.
Same.
But then
Uh,
after a while, I took it back to them. Actually, no, I just did some work, and I
mhm,
presented the work instead of doing a live demonstration of the program. And they were like, "Wow, okay, we should get that software, right?"
yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, that was the same software I showed you maybe like a year ago, and you said no,
Yeah.
it's not good."
Yeah, so I was gonna let's get into that later because I have a cool story the same as yours with Enscape and how I started out. But I was just gonna stop into each of these software real quick because I do find Lumion exterior renders very powerful.
Mhm,
The vegetation is awesome. The animated assets, everything. The thing about Lumion is it's not like there's not good interior shots or interior
mhm,
renders for Lumion. I just see them very rarely, and then the thing you said about D5 is actually very powerful because a lot of these softwares aren't actually listening to the requests that the actual community has. And I do use Enscape, and I do believe that Enscape is the most powerful one out of
mhm,
these in terms of the time to quality ratio.
mhm,
However, Enscape doesn't very much do that because I mean, animated assets has been a request for years now, and it has still hasn't come out. And
mhm,
I myself and I know a lot of other people that have lost clients just because they didn't have animated assets because a lot of people want animations and video
mhm,
walkthroughs that actually have movement and motion
mhm,
to it.
mhm,
The
mhm,
only motion that Enscape offers is the wind settings and all that for exterior. But obviously, D5 definitely is a major one that is breaking a lot of barriers. And then the twin motion path tracing has actually I've seen some very good renders in some groups and communities that I'm in. But I was also just going to ask you in terms of what is the difference, or a lot of people are scared to just go straight into CPU rendering with like V-Ray or Corona Render, and
Mhm.
like I myself knew, I always knew that the best quality possible or the best renders that I saw online were usually made with 3ds Max and V-Ray, or 3ds Max and Corona Render. And I
Mhm.
see a lot of people wanting to take that step from SketchUp and, let's say, Enscape to 3ds Max and Corona Render. And what do you think is the best way to transition through this? Obviously, except for upgrading the hardware, because there's a much bigger threshold in terms
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why um, SketchUp and all these very easy, simple to learn softwares are top notch is because it's not too taxing on your hardware, right? So
Yeah.
that's a plus already. Um, I think also the fact that it takes you a longer time to learn 3ds Max
Hmm.
and all these other softwares is also a barrier for most people. But I've seen amazing renders done with V-Ray for SketchUp, right? That I don't want to say they look better than 3ds Max. That would be just creating an all-out war.
Yeah.
But I think the it's you as the artist that has the power to create those images, right? So if you don't create good images, I don't think it's the program. I think it's just you,
Hmm.
right? Because like I've mentioned before, that it's your other skills that allows you to create great 3D images. Like if for SketchUp, for example, even though it's very limited on advanced modeling, there are plugins that you can connect with SketchUp.
Yeah.
There are ways you can get really good looking furnitures into SketchUp, right?
Hmm.
So that because that's one of the fundamentals that you really have to master is good 3D modeling. If you don't have that down, it doesn't matter how good your lighting is, or if you add all your fogs and atmosphere, it doesn't matter. Like if you don't have a good base,
It is the
your render, yeah, it's not gonna look good. So you can get that done in any program.
hmm
Like it might take longer, it might be harder for you to do it. Like 3D Max makes it really easy for you to create advanced 3D models, right? So
Yeah. Uh-huh.
that's why, like for me, you take the time to learn a software like 3D Max, it will benefit you in the long run. So that's why I'm saying you got to have the patience to learn these softwares, right? And you gotta take the time. Yeah.
I mean, you take 5 years out of your life to learn 3ds Max, and then AI comes in, which is, yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
that's why a
it,
lot of people are scared. That's why a lot of people are scared, and I mean, it's only fair, right? It's only fair. But again, like I said, AI is going to scare maybe us, right? It's going to be challenging for us, but not for the next gen. The next gen is gonna come in like
yeah,
holding it in like an iPad, and they're gonna figure it out, and there's
yeah.
gonna be new jobs, and we'll look at it like, okay, you know,
I actually am in the same position right now because I just upgraded my hardware to actually
mhm,
uh, do even more 3ds Max and Corona Render. I know a little bit of it, but I don't post content online of it because I'm just not an
mhm,
expert. And I
mhm,
believe if you don't actually know what you're talking about, you shouldn't just, I mean, upload content. At least that's what I believe in. And I was just thinking the other day with the rest of the team here at Scale, like the chances of this not being a business anymore are very high
yeah,
in the next 5 years, right?
mhm,
So that doesn't mean we have to be discouraged, because the skills that you learn from 3ds Max can be applied even outside of 3D visualization.
mhm,
But this is just something that you have to look out for. Um,
mhm,
I was also going to go back to what you said earlier about if the image doesn't look well, it's not the actual software, it's you. While I definitely do agree with this,
mhm,
what do you think of like actually comparing like the best output possible for like let's say the best 3D rendering artist in Lumion with someone who's like a very good 3D artist in Corona Render and 3ds Max? And the way that I see this is just that uh, some softwares can just limit your full potential,
yeah,
while with 3ds Max and Corona Render you can never say that the software is not enough.
mhm.
uh, what do you think of this? Like, do you actually agree with the fact that Just unarguably, the best combo out there is 3ds Max and V-Ray or Corona Render.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will answer your question in a different way because has an artist the key skill as an artist is creativity. Like
Hmm.
you being able to be creative with all of these softwares can allow you to do almost anything, right? Which is why I said like with SketchUp you can produce top notch renders. With 3ds Max you can produce even better quality.
Yeah.
So an artist that uses Lumion versus someone that uses Corona Render, you will have an edge, right? Based on
Hmm.
the software that you use. I
Yeah.
think you can even spot a Lumion render just by looking at it. There's some
Yeah.
things that give it away, right? But
If
when
you ask me
you
what it is that gives it away, I cannot tell you. But it's just
sorry,
some like if you would ask me what are the things that give it away that it is a Lumion render, I cannot like really tell you. But it just has a feel like of a Lumion render.
well, and that's what I mean. Like to even if there's some things like for example, we know what an Enscape render looks like.
Yeah.
We know what an Enscape render looks like. We know what gives it away that okay, that's Enscape. We know
Yeah.
Lumion also what gives it away. Most
Yeah.
of the times is really the grass. The grass is something that I look at and I'll be like, okay, that I've seen that almost everywhere, right? But softwares like Corona, for example,
Mhm.
and I will say V-Ray also, they have a way of, making, giving you that creative freedom to just be like, okay, you really gotta like know what your landscape looks like if you want to make it different. You have the tools and the features to to scatter things around and make it look as realistic as possible, right? But not to say that you can't do that in those other softwares, but then again it's like I said, you realizing that that's a challenge. If let's say you don't want it to look like a Lumion or Enscape render, you have to figure your way around that, right?
Mhm.
And if as a creative, then that's a problem that you have to solve within your skills, right?
Yeah.
So put is the same way of putting the two softwares together. It's hard because you can create the visuals that you really want. You just got to be willing to put in the work and the skill. So um I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I try too many things, too many softwares. I'm one of those guys that just knows a little bit of everything. I've
Mhm.
tried a little bit of everything. I've explored a little bit of everything, and I use the programs to my advantage in that sense, right? When I want to create a quick animation and we have an Enscape license, I jump right into Enscape. If your requirement is not animated people or
Yeah.
animated cars, I don't need to go to D5, I don't need to go to Lumion, right?
Yeah.
But if you do want those things, then you have to make the shift.
Yeah.
So but if
100%.
this is just a personal project where you're really trying to find out how good you can be or how good a software is, then yes, software is going to be a limitation. But number two to that is you have to be a really good artist. I think that's the decision that everybody should look at. It's not how many softwares you know, is how good
Yeah.
are you as an artist, because when you grab any software you can create whatever you want,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, there's
So
people that create outstanding renders with just using Photoshop, not even like
yeah, you can't
going
even
all.
touch them. You
Yeah.
can't even touch them. I know who is this guy. There are a lot of companies out there who I honestly don't know. There's Mir. There's Pixel Flakes.
Hmm.
These are companies that I when I wanted to be an artist, I would look at their stuff. I would read their blogs. Peter Guthrie,
Hmm.
who's now the Boundary. The Ronan Beckerman blog, super OG, super OG. I don't even know if people know. I mean, it was always popular for
Yeah.
starters. It was always popular, but because it's not a YouTube channel. It's not like it's not super out there with reels showing you stuff every day. It can get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
But Ronan Beckerman helped me a lot. Peter Guthrie and his blogs helped me a lot. Um, There's
I
just so many. There's so many out there, man.
you
I got a
mentioned
little off topic on that, but
no worries. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean
yeah.
it's all good. It's not like we have a set structure of what we're going to talk, but you mentioned some of these people, and I mean, like Mir or
Mhm,
MIR.
mhm.
Um, I mean they're like the final boss of 3D
Yeah, yeah.
rendering.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Um,
Those guys.
I'm
I don't know,
yeah,
man.
it's like they're just on a different level. I mean they went all in this, and obviously that's why they're like probably the number one 3D rendering firm for architects
Mhm,
and architecture in general and all that. But yeah, I mean, there are some OG people that did blogs for 3D rendering and all that, but I just like I'm just a very visual learner. Like YouTube has always been the go-to way for me to learn, and sometimes I'm just impatient to read blogs to actually learn. So everything I learned was through YouTube, and
mhm.
just being on the topic of YouTube. Um, while we're almost coming to the end of the podcast, what are your plans with YouTube? Do you actually have any videos coming up? And what is the roadmap for TN3D Studios look for in the future? Like, what can people actually expect from
Mhm.
TN3D?
I mean, I think I've always had a plan to eventually become a full time YouTuber,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's you have to balance both, right? You have to balance both because I'm always in the work field. I'm always in the work field. I work as an environment designer, like I said, and unfortunately, that takes a lot of time. As
Yeah.
bad as I hate to say it, it is the one thing that holds me back from YouTube as much as anything else. Um, I have big plans for this year, which was really to kind of like just take a full swing at the channel, make sure I put out as much content as possible. But as always, life happens in between, so
Hmm.
you kind of have to be able to manage those. But the channel is always meant to be a creative space where I share everything that I know. It's good to have podcasts like this because it always reminds me, shoot, I've always had these plans, so don't lose track of them.
Yeah.
But it's really just as we learn, as we evolve as artists, I want to make sure I leave a trail out there. In 2015, this is what I was doing. Now fast forward to 2023, this is what and the
Mhm.
channel documents all of that, right? So
Yeah.
it's really pushing out videos on current issues, software updates. I think even videos, kind of like the conversations that we're having now, it's really essential because it
Hmm.
shouldn't always be all about softwares. We should be talking about how to think as a 3D artist. What's the mindset of a 3D artist? What are those skills outside of softwares that we need that they can
The
kind of help
business
us
skills as
implement?
well.
The
Yeah.
business skills, those are a lot of things that people don't know, don't hear about, that we don't see, that's not really out there like that. There are a lot of channels that touch on those things, but again, I don't think there's enough people shining a light on
Yeah.
those issues because we do go through things, right? We do go through things, and it's good to put it out there. So eventually, I don't want to put on a date, but the channel will be back. I think I've note that to my audience. But those are the things I'm looking into, is to just shine a light on those things.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. It was a pleasure having you in the first episode of this podcast, and let this not be the last collaboration that we have. I hope that everyone who watched this actually benefited from this conversation. And I'll leave you with the last words. Whatever you have to say to the audience, feel free to actually um, tell them whatever you have in your mind, and then we'll probably do another collaboration soon that will be out there.
No, for sure. I think for starters, I want to thank you, man. It was a very short notice, and to reach out and to kind of like join the podcast. But I'm always open to conversations like this, And if I do have a podcast of my own, trust me, you'll be on the list as well. Um, and for anyone, I think you've done an amazing job, of making our content and shining a light on 3D visualization. And I think there should be more channels like yours, obviously putting on the work out there, because it's really, we are the front runners to exposing and talking about things in this field. So it's a scale. Is it still scale?
I mean, the rendering business is called Scale, but the channel is called Mellow. So yeah, it's all good. Yeah,
So I mean, it's good. It's good to have a platform to talk.
yeah,
And honestly, I'm actually more interested in talking about things a little outside of 3D rendering, like we done today, because it's we do 3D rendering already all the time, right? So it's good to get out of it, learn a little bit more, and then come back and apply that to our work. So thank you for having me. I appreciate having me on the podcast. First of all, especially just being the first time we talked, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then keep doing the good works, and anything else, I'll keep in touch with you, man.
awesome. All
I
right.
think you need to come down to the channel too.
Yeah, 100%. I accept the invitation from now. So whenever you start, whenever
Absolutely,
we have collaboration, we'll definitely do.
absolutely, man.